The reason I chose the topic today about the fears of starting a business and how to overcome them is over the last several months, I've spoken to tons of entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs. And there was a common thread in those discussions. As I said earlier, to me, they appear that they're ready. They've done all the due diligence. They're ready to go and get the sales. They're ready to go and market their business. They're ready to go and deliver and show the world the expertise that they have. But something is holding them back. I wasn't sure what it is. So I dug deeper. I asked a lot of pointed questions. I did some more research on my own. And then I came up with those 6 fears that we'll be discussing today on why is it that people who've done a lot of the legwork, they're still hesitating in starting their business. Those fears are, number 1 is the fear of financial instability. Number 2 is the fear of failure. Number 3 is the fear of imposter syndrome. I can talk about this for a day. Number 4 is the fear of rejection. Number 5 is the fear of the economy is collapsing. And number 6 is about that fear of maybe being too busy or having too much to do, or maybe not starting, this is not a good time to start. So we'll jump into these fears one at a time, and we'll go over, are these fears real? Are they imaginary? How to overcome them, some practical examples, and on how I dealt with those fears in my own startups, in my own business career, and also what I've heard from others on how they manage. And not only, the goal here is not to convince you to start a business. If you've done all the right things, I would encourage you to do so. I'm a big believer in entrepreneurship. I'm on my 7th venture. I love it. I recommend it to a lot of people. But at the same time, and in the same breath, I tell people entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And in this channel, my goal is to help you increase your chances of success. I'm not going to paint a rosy picture and say that, hey, you'll make it. I'll give you some positive boost, and then you're on your way to become a millionaire. I hope you can do that, and I can help you get there. But I also, part of what we do on this channel here is that we provide honest, practical, pragmatic advice to make sure you have the information you need to make an informed decision. So, not a cheerleader. I'm not it's going to be a Debbie Downer, but I want to equip you with the information you need to make the right decision for you. So let's talk a little bit about some numbers, some statistics. According to the Small Business Administration in 2022, 60% of Americans thought of starting a business. So 6 out of 10 people you meet, they had the thought about starting a business. Now, the overwhelming majority of these people did not take that next step of starting a business. 92% of them did not. So about 10%, they decided to move forward. Now, the main reason why the majority of those people did not move forward is the fear of failure. So this fear, or the fears we're talking about today, they're real. Most of them are, some are not, but there is a genuine concern that people have. And I think part of it is the nature of business is it's ambiguous. There's a lot of ambiguity. Business is unpredictable. And a lot of us, I think as humans, we dislike ambiguity. We like clarity. Ambiguity makes us uncomfortable, and unknowns make us uncomfortable. So those who are not open to taking risks, and those who are not comfortable leaving their comfort zone, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult for them to take that entrepreneurial leap. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, if you're employed, you might have some security. I think employment in general has the appearance of safety and security, and there's some safety nets and their benefits and 401k plans and whatnot. I want to remind you that this might not be the case. It might be just apparent, and all these benefits and all these safety nets are there till they're not. So keep that in mind. There's always risks in life. There are always risks in life. There are always opportunities in life. And if we're looking for to start a business for whatever goal. There are a lot of goals why people start businesses. One of it is obviously to make money, maybe make more money, have more resources, establish financial independence. Again, there are many other reasons on why people start a business, but the financial aspect is probably core to a lot of those who start a business. If you're looking for that outcome, it does require, great outcomes require sacrifices, require taking risks. And I think you can, hopefully by the end of this session today, you'll be equipped with information to assess these risks. So when we talk about fears, talk about courage, we talk about how to handle and how to overcome these fears. It's to help you, excuse me, make an informed decision about those next steps. So before we go to these 6 types of fears, let's just take a minute to talk about fear itself. Is fear inherently bad? Should we try to get rid of it altogether? I don't think so. I don't think it's realistic. We're wired to sense fear for a reason. It's our survival instinct. In a book that I read last year, and have it here, called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker, and he's a leading authority on protection of public figures against violence, mainly. A great book, a lot of practical steps for personal safety and how to think about fear and deal with it. But he says fear is a survival instinct that has evolved to protect us. So fear is a survival instinct that has evolved to protect us. So this is at the personal level, but that same approach, the same mindset that applies to business as well. And he identified 2 types of fears. One is what he called warranted, rational, I would say as well, where there's real danger and this danger requires an appropriate response. On the other side, on the other hand, there's unwarranted fear. There's no danger. The fear is irrational. And those are the 2 categories that I want us to keep in mind as a framework when we're evaluating the fears in business. So whether we talk about financial instability or fear of rejection or the imposter syndrome, as you'll see in the next few minutes, I'll go over these fears and the real fear, the real danger that we have to prepare for as entrepreneurs. And there are other things I think that we make up, other things that we make up in our own minds, or we might have sometimes, we have a specific phobia or what have you. And the same thing applies to business. So those are the 2, this is the framework I want us to use today, is the 2 types of fear. One is the rational fear that's based or related to reason, because it's just that, it makes sense. And this fear that has evolved to warn us of impending danger. For example, if someone is pointing a gun at you, fearing for your life is a real fear. If, for example, you lose your job, and let's say you happen to be in a position in your life today where you don't have a lot of savings, eventually fearing being homeless is a real thing. So that's on one side of it. On the other side, there's what I would say the irrational fear, or irrational fears, the unwarranted fears, the imaginary fears. They're not reasonable. There's a possibility that they would happen, but it's probably a very, very low possibility. And if we keep those imaginary, unwarranted fears front and center every second of the day, every minute of the day, that's going to inhibit us. That's going to prevent us from making any progress. So let's keep that in mind as we discuss fears and as you evaluate why is it that you're not starting that business, or why is it that you started, maybe you signed up, you spoke with a lawyer, you set up your LLC or your corporate structure, your legal entity, but you're not making additional steps. Evaluate these fears that you're concerned with within this framework. Is this rational, and how do I deal with it? Or is it just imaginary? And also, how do I deal with it? So let's go over these fears. But before we do that, we can't talk about fear without talking about courage. And it is a lot of quotes on this, a lot of stories you hear from public figures and amazing people that have survived, that have confronted a lot of fear, confronted a lot of challenges in their life. And the quote I like the most is by Nelson Mandela. He said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but it's the triumph over it. So it's basically the resistance of fear, or it's the mastery of fear, as Mark Twain said as well. So it's when we talk about, I want to grow my business to $1 million. I want to work with the Fortune 500. I want to have 30 clients in the first 6 months of the year. These are goals for your business. And if you have that fear about not being able to accomplish these goals, it's okay to have that fear, but we want to have the courage. We want to build up that courage. We want to muster that courage to overcome those fears. So when we think about it, if you want to have, if you're building, if you look at a building in Florida or in California, I lived in both places. They're built in Florida to withstand hurricanes. In California, where I live now, there's the code. The code is that certain things have to be done at the structural level to withstand earthquakes, or certain levels of earthquakes, right? So the same thing for our businesses. If we want to be able to confront those fears of starting a business, whether it's the financial aspect of it or the rejection aspect of it or anything in between, it's building a strong foundation for us to deal with that fear. And I'm not a psychologist, but from my readings, psychologists deal with people who have maybe phobias through either a gradual exposure or a sudden and intense exposure. So think about it in things that you have fears for as a person, maybe fear of height, maybe fear of darkness, maybe fear of being alone, whatever the case might be. There are ways to deal with this. And again, psychologists said you can do these, you can have gradual exposure, or you can have intense exposure. And again, speak with a specialist in business, or speak with a psychologist for personal, for the personal aspect of things. But in business, if you haven't done any sales and the concept of you asking people for money terrifies you, you can do things about it to have exposure to that. So you can start, for example, discussing the business opportunity, discussing your proposal, pitching your idea to those, maybe your partner, your spouse, your siblings, your children. Maybe go to a good friend of yours who can just listen to you and give you honest feedback. So look, I think in terms of countering those fears and confronting those fears, think of a way to get exposure to the things that we are fearful of in business. And again, depending on your background, on your subject matter expertise, if you happen to be strong in sales and you're out there networking and you can just come up with stories out of nowhere, and you're just in a networking events, you just talk to everyone, your fear might be about delivering the service. It's like, oh my God, I just, I can sell. I'm not concerned about this. And I just spoke with someone who was laid off, and he was thinking about starting a business. And he's great. He's a great people person. He's great in sales. He was a top salesperson in his previous job. His concern is, like he said, what do I do if I sell? He said, I can sell it. I can sell my consulting. It's in the financial sector. I can sell my financial consulting, no problem at all. I've been doing this for a long time, but how do I deliver? So on the other side, and I think this is what I probably hear more than I hear more of from entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs is you have a technical expertise. You're very strong at what you do. You're a master of your craft, or you're very good at it. But how do I sell it? How do I market it? So again, you can take steps, small steps, to get exposure to the things that you're not good at, or you don't have expertise in. Whether it's going to maybe going to, again, networking events initially before you start the business. Maybe you can freelance. Maybe you can start very small before you invest a lot of time. Maybe you have a full-time employment and you do something on the side for a couple of months, just to feel out how this running a business would be. So those are things you can do in terms of confronting, in terms of having the courage to overcome the fears. And again, we'll apply this framework to the different fears that we will be covering today. So let's see if we have some questions. Thank you, Paradise Cove, for joining us. And let's see if we have any questions from the folks who submitted the form. Is it recommended to start a business after a layoff? So we do have a live stream that I did a couple of weeks ago before the holiday on starting a business after layoff. So check it out. But quickly, I would say the same principles or the same guidance I would give to anyone who wants to start a business, it applies to someone who was just laid off. That one or a couple of things I would add is after layoff, and I speak from experience because I was laid off way back then, and when I was in a startup here in Silicon Valley, and then unfortunately I had to do some layoffs when I was a manager. That's a subject of a different time, but when you're laid off, you don't want to make an emotional decision. A lot of emotions we go through a lot of emotions after a layoff, and sometimes I've seen it where we have this knee-jerk reaction and I want to go and start something, and then you don't do the proper due diligence. I would say after layoff, assess your skills, assess what on your last performance review, what is it that your manager told you you're strong at, your skills, your people skills, your hard skills, your soft skills, and then make sure you properly vet the business idea, and then obviously put the business plan together and start the business. Now, I would also say one more thing for people who are laid off, and I know layoffs are still happening. I read the news every day, the business news every day, and I see it is still happening. Maybe not at the same volume as about a year ago or earlier this year, but this is still going on. So when you're laid off, the one thing that you have that you did not have before is time. You have a lot of time on your hand. Now, obviously, a lot of thoughts are going on and concerns about the financial side of it for your business, for your family. That's probably occupying your mind, but you have a lot of time in terms of what is that you can do. So maybe if you're still undecided about starting a business, maybe you can spend 30-40% of your time looking for another job, and the rest of it spend 6, 7, 8 hours a day vetting the idea and exploring, putting together the business plan. So that's my thought on starting a business after a layoff. The financial aspect as well is important here, and I'll leave it at that. And then we can, if you have a specific question, please send us an email or leave me a comment. But I would say also after a layoff, you want to look at your financial runway. If you have, let's say you have severance for 3 months, and maybe you can cut down some costs and delay the vacation and extend that financial runway to 6 months. So this way, at least on the financial side of things, you'll be at ease that you have coverage for 6 months, and that will allow you to launch the business and maybe get some revenue. So just keep that in mind. If you want to start a business and you're employed, then obviously that's going to take a lot of your weeknights and weekends to plan, to vet, to research, to start maybe do a beta release of the service that you're about to start. So those things are, I would say, keep in mind. One is, again, about the financial runway if you're laid off, and the second thing is you have a lot of time, so use it wisely to vet the ideas. Cool. Good question. And again, if you have a specific scenario that I did not cover, do let me know. I'll be happy to respond to you privately and provide more details. So the first fear is the fear of financial instability. And I hear this a lot. And it doesn't matter, even if you're not laid off, if you're employed today, and we're all accustomed to the paycheck and to the benefits, and the minute you stop the full-time job, that paycheck is going to stop. So what do? You could be terrified, like, I haven't sold anything before, so how am I going to sell? And let's say I learned how to sell, but when will I make enough money to cover my expenses? I have mortgage, I have rent, I have family, I have kids, I have a saving plan for my kids' college. Maybe I'm supporting a family member. I have obligations. I'm paying my college debt, whatever the case might be. We all have obligations. So and maybe you don't have a whole lot of liquidity. Maybe maybe you invested in crypto and Bitcoin. Maybe you bought Bitcoin when it was 60,000, and today I think it was at 38 the other day, or 37. So whatever the case might be, you might not have the liquidity, you might not have the cash flow, you might not have enough to support you and sustain you and your family and your other financial obligations for, let's say, 6 months. So what do you do? That's a real concern. And all these decisions about starting a business, about growing a business, committing more resources to the business, they have serious consequences, and there are serious considerations, especially when you make such a decision and you have other people relying on you, not just your family and your children and others, but also if you have a business partner, if you have maybe a couple of people that you've hired initially. So investing more in the business or not investing in the business, it impacts not just you, others around you. So that the due diligence, these serious, thinking about it is important. So the fear of financial instability. Let's apply the framework that we discussed earlier: the rational, the real fears versus the irrational, imaginary fears. So I would say something like, where do I get funding from? Or what if I lose my capital? Like, that's a real fear, because you need money to start a business. Even if it's a services business, you need some capital. So that's a real fear. Now, imaginary fears or irrational, an example of an irrational fear is you might be consumed by this idea, like, what if someone sues me and I lose all the money that I invested in the business, and then they go after my personal assets? Now, it could happen. I haven't seen it happen to a lot of people, but it could happen. So you evaluate this fear, the imaginary fear, in one way, and I think you evaluate the other one in another way. So about where do I get funding from? So you can tap in your savings if you have a good chunk of it, and your business partner, your life partner, is on board with that. You can get a loan from the SBA. You can get loans from against maybe some assets that you have. You can also find a partner who has access to liquid assets, or they have cash, but they don't have the time. So they could be a passive partner. They could be providing maybe some strategic advice and some cash flow, and then you do all the work. Or you could find a partner where they contribute a little bit to the business as well. So there are different ways on how to get funding for your business, and I think that would be the proper way to tackle that real fear of, how do I get funding from? And again, if it's a services business, and most of our content applies to services businesses, you don't need a whole lot of cash up front. So you can also start the business gradually. You can freelance. You can start without a whole lot of like marketing cost. You can reach out to your network, and you can tell, especially like your close friends and those who trust you already, and they know your work ethics, and you know that you're a professional. You can tell them, hey, I'm starting this. Maybe give them a discount. You can come up with creative ways to get that business. So these are ways to minimize or to confront that fear. Now, in terms of exposure, in terms of the imaginary fear, if this is something that's occupying your mind, talk to others about it. So the issue of someone suing me, losing all my assets, you're not the first person to start a business. There are, for example, different types of business insurances that you will be encouraged to have. Again, a good insurance agent or a good lawyer, they would point you in the right direction on that. So even those imaginary fears, if they're occupying your mind a lot, read about them, understand what's the likelihood of them, and then adjust the amount of energy and time you put to confront those. And again, the idea here is, I'm not telling you that go out and start a business and money will come your way, and you'll close deals the next morning, and people will go ahead and give you that loan right away. I'm not saying all of this. All I'm saying is, I want to equip you with these tools to make the assessment, to assess these fears that you have about the financial instability, and then come to your own conclusion. But as I said earlier, there is some risk involved. Life is not a spectator sport, and so is business. So you have to take some risk to reap the benefits, to get the rewards. It's just how life is. So it can't be zero risk and then expect amazing results. It just doesn't work that way. So I think, especially if you have, if you have big dreams, you have big goals, you want to achieve financial independence in a few years, it's going to require a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices, maybe borrowing money, maybe getting a loan, maybe getting a business partner. So all of those are things I want you to think about and assess for yourself, and then see if this is a right time for you to start a business. Or maybe, you know what, I have an idea, let me just put it on the shelf for a year, let me be very financially disciplined for next year and save X amount of dollars. So this way I'll be in a stronger financial position to start that business. So that's on that first fear of financial instability. Let's see if we have a comment here. Do we have a question on that? Yes. Should I tell my wife that I'm thinking of starting a business, or wait till I have more of a plan? I don't get between you and your wife. Your wife, your business partner, your partner, your people important in your life who are impacted by this decision. So I want to underline this. Anyone who is impacted by a decision you make, they're a stakeholder, they should be consulted. So I would say, short answer is yes, you should share what you're about to do with those who are impacted by that decision. In this case, your wife. I think going in there with, hey, I want to take half of our life savings and put it in this business. I mean, that's just not going to go well at all. So I think do your due diligence. I think in our business planning playlist, we have a video on business planning. I said, look, we have a video on the audiences for your business plan, your investors, potentially. You are one of the stakeholders. You want to make sure you run that business plan. But I believe I said in that video as well is that you want to make sure you have the support of those who are close to you, and those who are going to be maybe not involved in the business day to day, but when you come back home, you want to also have a peace of mind. There's a lot to deal with and manage in a business, and having issues there and then issues at home is not something that we want to be in. So I would recommend you do some planning, you do some vetting, you share your vision and your passion about what you want to do with your wife, and then, yeah, definitely, I definitely would not recommend, even if it doesn't involve tapping into savings or tapping into joint assets. Starting a business is a major decision. Probably one of the most consequential decisions. And if you ended up not doing well, and you haven't consulted with others, it's just not going to be. It's not going to end up. It's going to be just harder on the other side of it. So I would say, short answer, yes, do some planning. You don't have to do a formal investor pitch to your wife about the business unless she has subject matter expertise in that area. But just from a general peace of mind, and I've been married for many years, and I can tell you that on major decisions, it's always a good idea to involve those who love you, care for you. They want to see you succeed. They want to support you. So here you have it. Let me know how it goes, or if you if you're getting specific concerns from your significant other. Again, maybe I'll be able to share some of my personal experiences and what I've heard from other founders. Good question. Let's see. We have any other comments? Let me go to the next section. So the second section is about fear of failure. That's another very real fear. And I think it's real. It's more real because if you look at the stats, every year, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, every year about 1 million businesses spring up in the US. And I love it. I love this spirit of entrepreneurship that we have. But the failure rate is high. after the 20% after the first year, 30% after the third year, up to like 50% after the fifth year. And then if you read some other statistics, the rate of failure is much higher, even like 80% after the first couple of years. So when we hear this and we end up saying, oh my God, I might fail. That's real. That's not an imaginary fear that I might fail. That is warranted. That's real danger that we have to prepare for and have an appropriate response. Now, this is the framework I'm using: imaginary, real, rational, or imaginary, irrational. So what are some of the imaginary or irrational fears? You might be thinking, if I fail, everyone will judge me and they'll think that I'm a total failure, or I will lose all confidence in myself. If these thoughts are occupying your mind all the time, you gotta counter them. And again, I'm not all this sort of all about positivity and everything is positive and rosy, and no, but you gotta counter these negative thoughts with some positive thoughts. Think of the joy, the sense of accomplishment, the sense of you built something great. You have a company of 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, 100 people, an amazing culture. You're profitable. You're helping. You're donating. You're mentoring others. I mean, this is the other side of starting your own business. So we are impressed, and sometimes I think some of us idolized founders and entrepreneurs and those who are achieved and have done well, which is good for them. But this is the other side of it is that it's not all doom and gloom. Yes, there are businesses that fail, but some do well. So you want to counter those negative feelings with positive feelings and positive emotions. But at the same time, I think to counter this fear, the real fear that I might fail, is using many of the principles that I talk about all the time. The 5 P's: prior preparation prevents poor performance. So if you just go out and think of an idea and maybe have a business partner and you haven't done any vetting, you haven't done any market research, you haven't looked at the competitors' websites and spoke maybe with potential clients, you haven't put together a business plan, you haven't put together a financial plan on when you expect revenue, when your expenses will start to accrue. If you haven't done any of that and then you start a business, I'm going to tell you that I'm almost certain that you'll fail. I mean, sorry to say that, but I do talk to a lot of founders every week. On the average, I'm speaking to 2 or 3 founders. And as I said earlier, my mission after all these years in business is to help you increase your chances of success. I'm not going to paint a rosy picture. So I speak with people who don't do any of this stuff, and they I think this is a great idea. I think it's the most amazing idea. And they go out and put a lot of money into it. And they don't listen to advice, not just from me, from other business experts. And then they fail. So what do you expect? If you haven't done your due diligence, if you haven't done your homework, it's not going to work, just like anything else in life. So keep that in mind. I think you're doing your due diligence is important. Prior preparation, and again, we have a lot of videos on vetting the idea, on business planning, on marketing, on sales. So check out those resources, and a lot of great resources online as well. But you have to put the time to prepare for this business. It's, again, starting a business is one of the most consequential decisions you make in your life. So make sure you do it right. Now, how to counter, another way to look at it, how to counter fear is, and exposure. You can start small. You can again start with your circle of trusted friends. Pitch those ideas, see their reaction, adjust. Go to a networking event. Talk to a lawyer about the potential risk. Right. Talk to people who failed in their businesses. Let's say you're in the healthcare business. Let's say you provide management consulting. Let's say you provide process improvement consulting, or let's say you provide some sort of maybe billing services in the healthcare. So go and talk to people who started businesses in that sector and succeeded, and talk with people who have failed and learn from them. And look at areas in your life where you were able to confront that fear of failure. And I can tell you a personal example is that since I was young, I always dreamt of getting my black belt in martial arts. And when the time was right for me, after I started when I was in high school, and then I stopped, and then get busy in life, and later as I restarted in Aikido. And I remember when it was time to do take my black test, and the sensei, my teacher, was saying, "Yeah, you're ready. Go ahead, schedule it." I kept delaying and postponing, and it was a real fear of, oh my goodness, what if I fail on that exam? What if these junior students there see me failing? What if my peers and my teachers, I don't live up to their expectations? And I kept delaying and delaying. But at one point, as I think Mark Cuban said, I'm always afraid of failing. It's a great motivation to work. It's a great motivation to work harder. So I started to train harder. I think I was going like three times a week to the dojo, and then I started to go 5 times a week, and then I put the time on the schedule that I'm going to test on that day, and then I told everybody about it, and I went, and it ended up passing. So again, I think in the fears that you're facing about failure, it's real, but do prepare, work hard. Do your part. Even if you start an initiative and it failed, it's not the end of the world. Learn from that, see what didn't work well, and apply to the next initiative. So that is on the fear of failure. Let's move on to the fear of imposter syndrome. But before that, let's see if we have a question. We have something from Paradise Cove. Real great advice, and that can apply to all. Thank you. It says, regarding telling wife, honesty is the best policy. 100% agree. Thank you for that comment. Honesty is always good. And again, do your due diligence, prepare and share. Don't hide big decisions from those who love you and care for you. All right, let's see if we have a question that came to us. I don't see any questions, so let me proceed. So the fear of imposter syndrome. So there's a lot of glamour about founders and entrepreneurs. And I think also social media these days, it in a way, I think it has negatively affected us in the sense that like our sense of self-esteem, our sense of worth and self-esteem, we start to compare with this person and that person, this millionaire and that billionaire, and then we feel down, and we don't feel as accomplished, and all those emotions, and we hear about this all the time. I mean, couple thoughts on that is don't compare. If you started your business recently, or if you're about to start your business, don't compare your table of content or your chapter 1 with others' chapter 20. Someone who's doing a business for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they have multiple businesses. They've failed. They've made a lot of mistakes. They struggled. Trust me, we all have. So you can't compare. And then they made it maybe big. So don't compare where you are today with where they are now. And also, so that's one idea that's one concept in terms of imposter syndrome, where I'm comparing myself to others. Like, how can I be like them? How can I perform like them? It takes time, it takes practice. It takes the 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. The other side of the imposter syndrome is, I think it comes from our discomfort from doing things for the first time. And in business, there will be several things that you'll do for the first time. Again, if this is your first venture, you haven't done business on your own, even if you worked in a small startup and you wore a lot of hats, you still don't have the same exposure as when you're the business owner. Because as a business owner, I always say this, you're the CEO, the founder, and you're the janitor, and you're everything in between, everyone in between. So there are areas in business, be it HR, delivery, sales, marketing, those areas, or some of those areas will be new to you. And that will bring some discomfort that will add to this sense of this imposter syndrome that, am I a fraud? Who am I to go and sell the service to this big company? And, I just started, like these thoughts come to us. And I think I'm trying to remember back when we were in one of my businesses, we were a Google certified partner, and we were in the top 3, top 5 at the time. And I used to speak at conferences, and by that time we had Fortune 500 clients and amazing logos. And if I were to go and speak at a conference, to this date, I still remember those feelings like, oh my goodness, is this real? Can I really add value? Can I, can I really share any, experience I have? Do I have real experience? I mean, after all these accomplishments, and we were at, I think, like 8-figure revenue by that time, and these negative, bad thoughts come to us. So I do want to acknowledge that we get these thoughts, including people who are really, really capable and have strong domain knowledge, but it's something new that we haven't done before. So we might feel that we're not going to be able to perform. So again, they're real, rational fears, and there are things that are irrational. So if you're thinking that no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, nobody's going to buy from me, I won't be good enough, and I'm going to fail. Like if that thought is just occupying your mind the whole time, you have to figure out a way to confront that. So one solution would be is, don't attach your self-worth to results. Results are important. We started a business to make money. We started a business to be profitable. We started a business to leave a legacy. We started a business to have an amazing culture, unique. No one else has it. I want to take care of my employees. Whatever drive, whatever passion you have, that you turn into a business with a lot of the skills that you have. But don't attach your self-worth to results. Although results are important, as I said, focus on what you're accomplishing along the way. So even if you started a venture or an initiative and it didn't succeed, you have, by the time you get to this, what I would say, failure, you would have learned a lot that you can reapply to your next initiative and that you are likely to be successful at. So don't attach yourself a lot to the results, because again, and you're not the only one who has gone through an initiative or a venture and did not do well. So that's one thing. The other thing is, you can, I think, look for fulfillment in more forgiving places, like maybe a family member that you're close to, maybe how a great son you are, or a great daughter you are, or how a great father or mother, or how a great neighbor you are, how a great citizen you are. I mean, get some of that fulfillment from these forgiving places and use that to you're a good person, you work hard, and then if something doesn't work out this time around, and yes, there were sacrifices, yes, you lost some money in it, you put a lot of time into it, you put your heart into it and it didn't pan out, don't get stuck in that thinking. Learn from that and take it to the next initiative. And I was just listening to a podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago on the Prof G show, and he had Professor Galloway had Adam Grant as a guest. And the book that Adam Grant, the recent book, I listening to it here, it's called Hidden Potential. I'm midway through. The Science of Achieving Greater Things. And he talks about this concept, and he says, when people say, they praise you, and they say that you're intelligent or you're capable of X, Y, and Z, they're probably giving you a more objective and more neutral assessment than you're giving yourself. So if you're thinking, am I qualified enough? You have a lot of doubts. Think about it the other way. Think that people have expectations of me because they think I can do it. So turn this idea of an imposter syndrome, turn it around. And I spoke with someone recently who was actually not starting their own business, but starting. They want to move on to a new position, and it's something that involves more management, people management, larger scope, bigger company. And they were really concerned about their ability to perform at that level. And I've known this person for a number of years. I said, my friend, and again, I give pragmatic, practical, honest advice. I said, let's look at your skills. Look at what you've done. Yeah, you haven't managed a team of 20 people, but you've managed a team of 5 people. You haven't worked on 3-month projects. You've done smaller projects, but look how customers, how they review, how high they think of you. Look, so again, it's a bit of an encouragement. But I think if this idea of, am I a fraud? Can I do it? Can I deliver the service? Can I sell? If those thoughts are again occupying your mind, I think seek the advice of those who know you well, who care, who have knowledge in the space that you operate in, and they're likely to give you a more objective and neutral assessment of your capabilities than you would give yourself. So don't go too hard on yourself. Again, assess your skills, assess your capabilities, assess your resources, and take some risk. But don't go too hard on yourself. And I see it all the time. And sometimes a bit of encouragement does help. So do talk to people who care, people who are knowledgeable in your space, and people who would give you a bit of time of the day to provide you with good input. So let's see what questions we have. Should you start a business if you have real self-esteem problems? Should you start a business if you have real self-esteem problems? So it's a tough one. That's a good question. I haven't seen those questions before. Those were submitted earlier. I mean, I need more details, but I would say you want to start a business checking off, if not all, most of the things that are required to increase the likelihood of you succeeding. So, for example, there's having skills. That's important. A certain skill. If you want to be an HR consultant or a coach, a communication coach, or you want to be a counselor, that's the business you want to start. Or you want to start a marketing agency. So you have to have subject matter expertise, or maybe your business partner, one of you, would have that subject matter expertise. So go through that. So in self-esteem problems, if it's along the lines of what we discussed earlier, like, I don't think I'm good enough, I don't think I'm capable enough, I don't have the skills. I mean, some of those things you can address by getting the skills. So give you an example. I didn't know how to sell. I have never done sales before I started the first startup. So I went through a number of sales courses, a whole lot of them. I think 3 or 4. There was like 2-3 day courses. I listened to CDs back in the day when CDs were a thing. And I still struggled, in selling for the first couple of years of the business. But I don't know if that was self-esteem or just lack of skills, but I was always doubting, like, oh my God, like, how can I, like, look at these amazing people who just go in a room and they kind of manage the crowd. They just hear things out and quickly act on their feet. They convince the customer to buy very quickly. And it took me maybe 3 meetings to convince someone to just look at a proposal. So I would say identify the problem areas, or the areas that you don't think you have the skills in, or you're doubting yourself, and talk to, again, people who can give you good, sincere, solid, honest advice, and work on that. I wouldn't, if you're really doubting your capabilities, it could be because you don't have those capabilities, or it could be just something, again, imaginary. So I would say speak with people who have dealt with similar issues than that you have dealt with, and see how they've overcome them, and then put that into action for you. So a tough question. I probably need a bit more context. So feel free to leave us a comment, or if it's more private, go on startupaffairs.com, send me an email. We don't share this publicly. I'll be more than happy to answer that specifically, or schedule. We do offer a 30-day, not 30-day, a 30-minute session, free session, no obligations, no pitching, no consulting, just free session for me to hear you out, understand what you're going through, what sort of challenges that you're encountering, the small wins, the big ones you're going through, and help you with that. So if you have a specific question about your situation, about the self-esteem, I would definitely be more than happy to spend some time with you, and maybe help point you to some resources. All right. So moving on to fear number 4, and just if you just joined with us, we are about 60-70% of the way. We talked about we'll talk a little bit about fears, and fear and courage. We're talking about 6 types of fears. We covered 3 so far: the fear of financial instability. We talked about the fear of imposter syndrome, and also we talked about the fear of failure. So the three that are coming up now is the fear of rejection, the fear of the economy collapsing, and then the last one is the fear of starting a business is a lot of stress. It's going to take a lot of time. I don't want to have any stress. I don't have the time. So that's what we will be covering in the next 20-25 minutes before we wrap up. So again, if you have any questions, you have any comments, please leave the comments. Or again, if it's a maybe very specific, very private question, feel free to send us those emails on the website. So the fear of rejection. I think if there's anything that is universally experienced by all entrepreneurs is rejection. You will get rejection from leads and customers, from business partners. You want to have someone as a partner, they say no, not a good time, not a good fit. You want to go get a loan, the branch manager at the bank, they're going to say no. You're going to get rejections a whole lot of time, especially initially. So what do? It's life. It's part of it. You just have you're going to develop some thick skin. That's my quick answer. And I'll tell you, the first day we went out to sell website design services, and this is back in 2013 when I started my partner and I, the first business, and building websites was very cutting edge at the time. So we figured we go out and pitch to people that we know, and we figured these restaurants, local restaurants we eat at, they know us. We've been giving them money for all these years. So we went to 5 restaurants the first day, in one day, and we got 5 rejections. It was very hard. I mean, at the end of that day, it was devastating. It was like why are we doing this to ourselves? And I was right before that, a couple months before that, I was a VP in a startup here in tech that was selling to Fortune 500, and we had raised $96 million. So I was working with these Fortune 500 and different environment altogether, and then go and in a few months go and pitch to small local restaurants, and all say no. It was hard. It took us a couple of days to recover, but you know what? We said we got to do it again, and we kept going at it. And obviously, we sold the first project, and then the second, and the third, and then we did well after that. So that's a real thing. It's going to happen. We just have to live with it. So, but there's also, applying our framework, there are some real rational fears in the area of rejection, and there's some imaginary and irrational fears. So, for example, the road to success is bumpy. you'll be rejected. And I think we have a slide on that. Uh, a lot of us think of success as a linear line. We're starting here, we're going to end there, we're going to be millionaires in a few years. Okay, it doesn't work that way. You'll get there. If you work hard and you learn from your mistakes and you're resilient and you get lucky a little bit here and there, you'll get it. You'll make it big. Right? No one guarantees success, but if you have all the right components and you work hard and you learn, you can pivot, you can do things, you'll make it. But along the way, as you see in the graph here, there are a lot of ups and downs, there are a lot of circles, it gets really messy, and rejection is part of this messiness. So mentally, I think being mentally prepared to deal with the path to success, I think is important, because then you just deal with it. Again, you need some skills, you need some expertise, you need people to give you advice. That's just all how you handle stress and challenges in business. But that mental preparedness, that I'm not going to get a contract and a $10,000 deal from my first pitch. It's highly unlikely. It might take you 10 pitches to get 3 people to ask for a proposal, and of those 3, 1 will buy from you. It might take you 20 pitches to get 1 contract. So that's, I think, be ready for that mentally. Now, if you have this, using our framework, the irrational imaginary fear that no one will buy from me. I'm too old, I'm too young, I am a minority, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. People will not get my idea, people will not get my business, people will hate on it. I mean, if you're starting to think about this and that's occupying your mind all the time, you have to rethink all of this. And again, you can, in terms of exposure, you can start with taking small steps. You can story I read about a tech founder, Ji Jung, his business was failing because this type of fear paralyzed him. So he set a goal. He said, over the next 100 days, I'm going to go and get 100 rejections, 100 no's. He wanted no's. And by building this endurance for rejection, he was able to overcome his fear, and eventually he got to a lot of yeses. So, and I'm adding his book to my list of readings. So the key here is to be able to go out and experience. You can't learn this stuff on YouTube. You can't learn this stuff by reading books. You can learn the approaches, but you have to experience, just like martial arts, just like any art, just like skiing, just like riding the bike, learning how to drive. You can't learn this stuff by just reading stuff. You can't by just reading books or watching YouTube. So you have to be out there, experience these rejections. So, but you can, instead of exposure, it doesn't have to be sudden. You don't have to go and present to a Fortune 500, to like the C-suite, CEOs and CMOs of a big company initially. You can start with something smaller, start with someone maybe you're familiar with, and they're going to say no to you. They might not say no right away. They might just drag their feet, and after 10 attempts of getting back, getting to connect with them, they're still not connecting with you, and you know that implied no. So I think that exposure is important, by just going out and pitching, going out, and in terms of hiring, going through the process and all the best practices on hiring. If you're not sure that you'll be finding the right hire. And again, we have our next week, a week from today, December 6th, we'll have our live stream on your first hire and the best practices. So developing that tough skin and that resiliency, being resilient, is important. There's no escape. And I think you can do it in small doses. You can learn. I remember one of the sales coaches told me this is one business card where things said, print 1,000 business cards and give them to a lot of people. And I did that. And I think he said, get rid of them in 3 months. I think I did that in a month or so. So just being out there and practicing my pitch and telling people about who I am and what I do. And then it became a second nature. And then when people say no, I mean, it still hurt when you're pitching or when you're trying to hire someone and they decide not to work with you, or maybe when you're you're trying to get a business partner to be on board with your vision and be part of this venture. They say no. I mean, these things do happen. I mean, yes, business is personal, but also don't take it too personally either. It's just the nature of business. You're not going to win all deals. You're not going to hire all the people you want to hire. You're not going to be able to get sometimes the right type of partners, for your services business. So I think a lot of this is to go out and do it, and developing that resilience and the thick skin. And then again, when you fall, getting back up, that's resilience in my mind. That's a key mindset that entrepreneurs have to have. So that mindset, this one is all about mindset, and hopefully by getting a lot of no's initially and failing fast, you can recover and do much better after those initial encounters. Let's see if we have any questions before we go to the fifth fear, which is the fear of the economy collapsing. So we have any questions? How long did it take you to close your first deal in your first business? I think it took us a couple of months, if I remember correctly. I mean, we after that first day of 5 rejections, took a step back. It got easier. Pitching got easier after doing it 5 times the first day. I think it took us 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks to get that first deal. To at least get that one client engaged. And I remember in a different business, pitching and selling, all that was second nature at the time for me. So the pitching was not a problem. Putting a proposal together, presenting to a customer was not a problem. When you're on second business or third business, it's a new area that you haven't done before. You don't know the space, you don't know the lingo, you don't know all the pain points of the customers. So even in my second or third venture, I still had other types of issues in terms of closing deals, and those deals would take longer to close. Not because I wasn't initially in my first business, I wasn't confident, comfortable. I didn't have the experience to pitch and convince someone or present a persuasive proposal. But later, those were not an issue. But sometimes knowing the marketplace, knowing the pricing of your competitors, knowing who you're competing against, there are other factors that could delay deals. So it's always depending on your space. It might take you sooner. It might take you less time, more time to close a deal. But it's just part of it. I think some services, by nature, the more expensive, the more complex services, the longer they're going to take you to close. Whereas the smaller services, maybe less expensive services, you can close at in less time. But that, yeah, for us, it took us a little bit of time. And if you're doing your financial planning, plan for a worst case scenario, hope for the best. But when I'm looking at sales projections, and it could be a basic spreadsheet in Google, in a Google sheet, say here are the number of leads I'm going to go after. Of those, maybe 10% will close. Of those, maybe we'll close at, let's say, $5,000 per project. So put that financial plan, and then put some assumptions, like it's going to take me 2 months to close the first deal and to get that maybe 50% deposit on that project, or that initial payment. I think, and then as you do more of sales and as you have more clients, I think you'll have to have a better benchmark just from your own data and what a sales cycle is like. So anyhow, that's a subject of a different discussion, sales cycles. I think we have a video on that, and we have a video on. I know I'm using a lot of sales examples because a lot of the early stage founders, how do I get sales? How to get revenue is always top of mind. But we do have a few videos on sales, on the sales funnel, the ultimate guide to sales funnels for professional services, for consulting professional services business. So check that out. I do cover some of the topics about sales cycles. I think that's really important for you to be aware of. All right. So moving on, fear number 5 is the fear of the economy collapsing. So whether it's the dot-com bubble, it's the housing problem, or 2008, or COVID, more recently, the economy, we're not safe from downturns. I think there, and depending on the economic situation, some businesses might be more impacted than others. For example, during the early days of weeks and months of COVID, if you were in the hospitality business, if you were in travel, hotels, restaurants, if you started a business that required walk-ins, I mean, obviously that was severely impacted. So those things could happen, and that's part of sort of the unknowns. But a lot of businesses, from again the recent experience of COVID, were able to, especially if they had a strong business foundation, they were able to withstand, just the pressures. They were able to weather the storm. They were able to maybe pivot and offer different ways to work with clients, and maybe different ways to extend contract, or give some different payment options so contracts are not canceled. So the idea here is there's things outside of our control, those macro trends or macro factors. So I wouldn't lose. I'd be aware of them. I don't want to start a business in an economy that's declining severely. If my business requires a lot of labor and in a certain area in a sector that is just booming in automation, I might want to reconsider what I want to start. But again, differentiate between real rational fear and imaginary irrational fears. So a recession might happen and I will fail is a real fear. An imaginary fear would be economy is terrible, there's so many layoffs, a depression is looming, and no one will buy from me, and I can't pivot. I mean, if you're thinking about in that scenario, there are probably worst case things that are happening to humanity if all of these things are happening. You can't pivot. A depression is looming. Everybody's laying off. Economy is terrible. There are probably major things are happening in the world beyond just starting a business. So I think be aware of the trends in the sector that you have subject matter expertise in. See what is booming and growing and thriving, what is declining. I think that's all part of doing your due diligence in terms of the fear of the economy collapsing. But also, I wouldn't be too paranoid about these external factors and extreme economic conditions that are not very likely to happen. And if they happen, a lot of times when there's an economic downturn, there are new business opportunities that will spring up. So you could pivot and take on those opportunities. And think of the transferable skills. If you have in your business, if you have to pivot, let's say there's some new regulations in your vertical, and you can't meet those regulations, and you have to move to another sector. Let's say you worked in again let's say insurance space, and they're requiring things and certifications that you just not be able to achieve. You look at your skills, again, soft and hard skills, and see of those, many of those are transferable, and how do I take that and apply it to maybe a booming sector, maybe in the area of sustainability. Maybe if you're technical, obviously AI is the talk of everyone today. Every business is trying to either use AI, leverage it in their processes, or incorporate AI in their services and their products. So depending on if you have to pivot, if the economy or external factors in general are applying so much pressure on your business that you're not going to be able to sustain it, I think that's a real fear. The way to deal with it is if you have a strong business, you have good savings, you have good cash flow, you have specific skill sets, transferable skills, then one option would be to pivot into something different. Otherwise, you can maybe, if this is, again, like the COVID example, if you're able to withstand this and weather the storm for a few months, you can then come back and thrive after that. So those are my ideas in terms of the economy. And I'm always inspired by, I speak with either entrepreneurs, and sometimes I speak with young graduates who are looking for career advice. And by the way, when I say I speak with entrepreneurs, I don't charge for any of this. A lot of people help me along the way, a lot of people, and that's my way of giving back. And it's not charity or just you know I do it sincerely because I also want to learn. And a lot of what I hear from entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs, it actually it inspires me to, yeah, I can help. I can show them the way. I can at least show them what worked for me. Maybe that could inspire them to do better, and that would help us actually. If I speak with Dave or with Tina, or there are many Daves and many Tinas out there who need that same type of help. So feel free to reach out if you're struggling, and let me know. And again, I get inspired by these stories, and I hope I can provide guidance. And one specific one recent discussion about someone who graduated from my alma mater, Tulsa University. Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember the name. She was looking for a job, and she could not get any response. And I spoke with her. I gave him some pointers, and she spoke with someone else too. She said she applied to 500 jobs. 500 jobs, did not get one interview. So I gave her some tips, and just to be more, I guess, more targeted in her outreach. And later she was able to land a job at Amazon. But what inspired me out of that story, and again, this is when we're talking about economic downturns and challenges in the business, is that her persistence. She kept for months. I think it took her like 3. She was looking for jobs every day, submitting application, doing follow-ups. Right, no one was responding to her, but she still kept going at it. So, um, so that's the lesson there. Is no matter what the external factors are, I think persistence, learning from the mistakes, improving the way we market, the way we pitch, the way we package our services will lead us to better results. So we have the last fear here, and then we wrap it up. Before we do that, let's see if we have any questions. What is the right business between your new business and family, friends, and fun? I'm going to cover this right now. So founders struggle with the work-life balance. When you're working, you're thinking about home, especially if you have young children or you have obligations at home, your significant other. And then when you're at home, work doesn't end. There's one more proposal to send. There's one more email to send. Unhappy employee, you name it. So finding this balance, this work-life balance, I don't think is, or having a work-life balance, I think it's a myth. I think it's not realistic. I think it's bad advice. I think managing the imbalance, and I don't know if I came up with this or someone else said it, but managing the imbalance is what we are about. If you are serious about starting and growing a business to 7 or 8 figures, it's going to require a lot of sacrifices. It's going to require time. It's going to require, obviously, financial resources. It's going to require attention. You'll be thinking about it day and night. So, because that's just the nature of life. Anything that is worthwhile is going to require sacrifice. It's going to require some risk taking. So there's some trade-offs there, and you might not be able to make those trade-offs in every phase of your life. If for example, you just had a baby, if you have challenges at home, if you, for example, excuse me, have aging parents to take care of, if you just bought a house and you're moving to a new place and you haven't settled, if you don't have enough expertise to be a consultant or to be a service provider, if you have no cash resources, you have urgent need for cash. I mean, these are real fears. These are rational fears. There are situations where maybe it's not the good time to start a business. So keep those circumstances in mind. And maybe the right decision is not to start a business now, because you have circumstances in your life that are likely to prevent you from having the focus and the attention and that mental capacity and the mental space to dedicate, that needs to be dedicated to your new venture. So those are real rational fears and circumstances that you have to address and deal with. But if you're thinking that, oh my goodness, I'm going to be sucked into my new venture, I'm going to be working 80 hours a week, I won't have time for anything, my marriage is going to suffer, my relationships are going to suffer, I'm going to have health issues and stuff. I mean, if this is what you're thinking, I don't know what movies you're watching, I don't know who you're talking to. There's some of that's real, that's rational, but it doesn't have to be that way. So, and I think in terms of, again, exposure to this, to deal with this fear, in terms of how to counter it, how to overcome it, you can, if you have your business, so if you have your 9-to-5 job, you can freelance on the side and just check out what it takes to sell and deliver. You can, for example, in terms of sacrifices, you can decide, going into a venture that I'm going to be spending 60 hours a week. That's the number I use. If you're serious about starting a business, maybe I will have less vacation days, still have a vacation, still have quality time. You still need to have quality time for yourself, for your family, but maybe shorten that vacation. Maybe less binge watching. Maybe if you have 3 hobbies, maybe cut it down to 2 for the next couple of years. You make those choices. I'm not going to make them for you, but you can't have the cake or eat it, or I guess maybe sometimes you can. But the idea here is focus on what's important. If this is really important for you, you have to make the time for it. You have to clear up your schedule to focus on this new venture. So I think in terms of, the too much stress, the fear of not having enough time, or maybe this is not the right time to do it. Again, if there's serious things that are happening in your life, you have to take care of those in your personal life. You have to take care of those before you can be focused and dedicated on your business. But if it's about leisure, about not wanting to put the time, or not willing, or not ready to put the time for whatever reason, then those are choices. You make those choices, and I won't make them for you. And you can definitely, no matter how hard you work, I'm all for working hard, playing hard. No matter how hard you work, you got to have healthy eating habits, healthy workout habits, even just to walk around the block, whatever the case might be, whatever you think is going to give you a solid foundation for you to thrive, at work, because it is starting a business, growing a business is very demanding, and having good health routines, good physical exercise routines are really they're really important for you to have that clarity, to have, after a long day, when I go to the Aikido practice, get thrown around on the mat, it is very refreshing. I'm not thinking about anything else but how to deal with intense situation, and I leave the practice fully refreshed, and I can put in a couple more hours of work after that. So again, find what works for you. Again, establish healthy habits, establish good eating habits, good health habits, good workout habits, and then go out and start that business. But if you have significant circumstances in your life, deal with those first, and then maybe delay that starting the business till later. And this whole concept of balance, it reminds me of a story, another Aikido reference here, going off on Aikido in this session today, but that's okay, is the founder of Aikido, Sensei. One time he was sparring with an accomplished fighter, and then a young student asked the master, he said, "Oh, Sensei, master, you never lose your balance. What's your secret?" And then in martial arts, having strong balance is foundational. If you're not balanced, it's going to be really hard for you to make moves or make a respond to an attack. So being balanced, physically balanced, is really important. So the student is asking, the young student said, "How do you maintain your balance? You never lose it." And then Sensei said, "You're wrong. I constantly lose my balance. My skill lies in my ability to regain it." So we lose our balance. We have to manage the imbalance. We have to regain the balance. That's just the nature of practice, martial arts or otherwise. That's the nature of business. So there you have it. We covered the 6 fears of starting a business. And before we wrap it up, I just want to summarize that 4 points. One is that acknowledge the fear. The fears we discussed, and there are a few other fears. We have to acknowledge them. Pretending they don't exist does not help. It makes those fears worse. Finding courage, get some exposure. If you don't have that intense, sudden exposure, maybe gradual exposure. Set some small goals. Freelance. Start sell to people you know. Speak with people who've gone through the challenge that you have. So find that courage and build it up and muster that courage to take the next steps in starting a business. And then look at the fears that you've encountered in your personal life, whether it's the fear of, again, darkness or getting into the water, or whatever it is, swimming, or when you're younger, how you maybe going to a new school, how you ask for promotion, all those fears, how you dealt with those fears and how you managed them and how you conquered them, and see if you can apply that to the fears of starting a business. And then last but not least, set past failures in a new light. We all stumble and we all fail and we all make mistakes. Even after, this is my 7th venture now, and sometimes I said, how did this happen? You make a mistake, whether it's you hire the wrong person, or maybe you sign up the wrong client, or maybe you pitch a lot and nobody's buying because maybe you're pitching the wrong crowd. So whatever the case might be, don't let failure or the mistakes you make, they don't define you. Just destigmatize the idea of failure. So that's it for today. A couple of quick things. If you haven't liked this video, do so now. Subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment. I'd love to hear about your challenges, your small wins, your big wins, and how is it that I can help you. And share this with others who are maybe having these concerns about starting a business. Also, we do have the Daily Advisor, our newsletter dedicated to founders and aspiring founders who want to build and grow 7- and 8-figure businesses. So go to our website, startupaffairs.com, and sign up for the Daily Advisor. You get every Monday through Friday, every day, you have either a summary or specific tip or a link to a video that we publish. So we'll hope you benefited from this. Leave me a comment and join us next week, Wednesday, December 6th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, to learn about how to hire, about your first hire, best practices, what to do, what to avoid, so that you can have you make the right decision with that very important hire. Your first hire is going to potentially help you make it or break it. So see you next time. See you next Wednesday. Have a good one.